been teaching at Milford High School out on the east side of Cincinnati for about 8 years after graduating from the University of Cincinnati back in 2012. And as you all know, in March, we all shifted to online education. And I felt somewhat prepared for that because at the high school level, we are expected to, at the very least, post our assignments online. And so we kind of had that system in place. However, the expectations for student engagement and communication for parents was kind of all over the place. And so after that first couple of months was under our belt, we were able to kind of regroup over the summer and just kind of come together more cohesively as a team. And that really helped the teachers kind of develop some standard of expectation that we were then able to kind of pass on to our students and families. So I like to think that, March, April, May, and June was kind of our rough draft of our online teaching, and this year it's going a lot better and a lot smoother. So I'm sure that we'll get more into that, but that's just kind of my initial thoughts on that topic, and just a little bit about me. And I'm actually here at Milford High School now. Just thought it'd be nice to stay in the environment that we're talking about. So I've got my mask, I've got my barrier, and I'm excited to be part of this conversation. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Chris. Ryan, you want to go next?
Yeah, hello everyone. Can I get a thumbs up? So I can't see the tiles right now, but one big thing that I've learned is that hand signals, there we go, Flavia. Hand signals are the communication of today in remote learning. I got like this one, I got this one, thumbs down. But yeah, it's all about assessing that the students are paying attention. So, and this is an official form of assessment. So a little bit about me. My name is Ryan Tinney. I'm a master's of art education at UC. I am an artist, teacher, and gamer. I paint, I make a lot of digital media. I use a lot of Adobe products and other products, but I also make video games. And I really have been wanting to teach how to make video games. And I think that they are art. So kind of to answer your question, well, I kind of can answer it from many different perspectives because I experienced online learning as a student, and then I experienced it as an instructor. I've experienced it as a teaching assistant, and I've also experienced it as a researcher. So I've had many hats in this online setting. Just like Chris, I am also in my classroom, which is my house, because I am 100% remote, because I am not allowed in the building. They think I go to too many frat parties or something. But yeah, I do everything from remote, and I feel like going through as a student through the quarantine has really prepared me as an instructor, because I already like dealt with the shock and didn't have to teach. And then over the summer, I got to run a remote summer camp for a lot of my campers at the Kennedy Heights Arts Center, and we had to go completely online. So what I've learned from online compared to in person is that there is a lot more preparation. There's plenty of preparation for the in people learning, but you also have to prepare your technology. You need to test it. You need to IT it. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff to deal with that. But I found that teaching art works really well with making instructional videos. So I'll talk a bit about that and making those. But yeah, it's just all about learning these remote online formats to where we can still socialize and still interact.
I just want to jump in there and comment on that. I certainly agree, and probably everyone that's teaching online will agree that it is a lot more preparation. I mean, I feel like every day I'm juggling all of the different classes that I have to prepare, and those of us that are teaching hybrid students where it's online and in person, and then some classes where it's all in person and other classes where it's all online. I think that especially the first weeks, that mental juggling of preparing all of those different lessons and all of those different formats took some getting used to. So, you know, back in the spring, we were 100% online, but now we've shifted back to in-person about 80%. It just requires a lot more preparation. So I'd certainly agree with that. And I'd like to learn more about how you prepare your tutorial videos. That sounds good.
Well, thanks, guys. That was my next question, is how your preparation has changed. Because as Ryan said, you do prep the tech and the lesson now, right? So I don't know if Ryan, you wanted to talk about those videos a little bit, and because it connects to preparation, and sort of talk about that in a little bit more depth.
Yeah. So especially for my video game camp, making the tutorial videos was actually very important. Thankfully, I already created a couple, but I just made some more for the camp specifically. But essentially, I screen captured what I was doing on the screen, which was very useful, and just talked while I went through the video of all the steps that they would have to take to, you know, build a game level or put in the player character or code, so that when I gave the lecture, which was on the same exact material, they can then go to the video and play it back and forth to watch that. Other videos as far as prep goes, and I do think that this has been kind of done with a lot of, like, because we're all connected to the internet now, YouTube has become a very great educational resource. There's so many great educational videos on there, and they're usually made for kids, so they don't have ads, which is a big deal to me. But like, you show them especially with the younger generation, even the older generation, when you're introducing the topic, you show them the YouTube video that goes along with it. Usually with like little kids, it's like a story. It's a video of the book being read. Or it's just like, for example, I had a video for teaching Impressionism, which kind of was a fun, like, little mishmash of all these like animated figures of the painters. And then we went into the lesson, and I can kind of show it off too. About, I got my tripod here, and I got my light that like shines on my sketch pad, and they watch me as I draw and follow along. As far as other prep goes, especially with the videos, I ran another project, the Who's an American Today, which is Dr. Bastos's little research child that she helped me raise. And with that, we used YouTube to show a lot of example videos of other students who have done the project before. Yeah, that's a lot of prep on my side, which is more digitally. I'm curious to see what Christopher does in person as well as digitally, how he blends that.
Thank you
Chris,
for
do you want
asking.
to jump in? And
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So for better or worse, since starting at Milford 8 years ago, I have shifted to mostly a digital art teacher. I started out teaching drawing and painting and sculpture, and now mostly just teach digital art. So the classes I teach are digital photography, graphic design, and then the yearbook class. And so all three of those subjects are kind of handled digitally. But just in preparing for this conversation, I was just kind of listing out all the different digital technologies that we use So of course we all have our different video conferencing software, Zoom, Google Meet, Skype, etc. I mean, that's one aspect of planning and preparation. We also all have our instructional websites, Progress Book, Schoology, Blackboard, Google Classroom, Canvas. So those take some time to prepare and kind of learn more about. And then out here at Milford, and I'm sure a lot of other schools, we use a lot of Google software. So students create and share Google Docs, Google Slides, use Google Drive to upload images, and Gmail to communicate. And then of course, you have all of your different online resources, YouTube, Padlet, Wordle. You know, they come out with a new kind of interactive thought exchange app, it seems like every month. So some of those things have just taken some time and some energy to learn more about and to prepare. It is also kind of interesting to think that at any time we have to be prepared to shift online. So I kind of make sure that I communicate with my in-person students that at any point they're going to need to be able to hop onto the digital classroom train as well as my online students. And so it's all kind of set up the same. But it does definitely take some preparation and some planning because essentially students need to be able to access your lessons as you want them to understand them at any point in time, whether they're in person or online. We've kind of bridged those two together so that now the students can go to one place. For us, that happens to be Schoology. I know that every school has a different system, but you know, if they go to Schoology and look at the lessons planned for that day, they should be able to kind of figure out what's going on. But as you can imagine, that takes a lot of preparation where you have to go in and kind of update that for each one of your classes just about every day or every week. So a lot more planning.
Thanks, Chris. My next question is sort of, what are the biggest pluses to sort of digital learning in your experience? And then what's the biggest drawback? What's the biggest drawback, Ben? So sort of the yin and yang of that, because I think a lot of times we frame it as sort of like, oh, it's just bad or it's just good. But I think it's sort of, there are some things maybe we can take away in the future, and then things we've realized about sort of art education that maybe were sort of heightened by the situation. So Ryan or Chris, I don't know who wants to go first. Maybe Ryan, because Chris, you just finished talking, give you a little break.
Yes, certainly. So let's start with the negatives and then we'll do the positives. Bad news, good news. All right. So there is definitely a lot of negatives with online learning, mainly because teaching is a very human thing. The human relationship is so important with teaching and growing. So the relationship is tougher. It's not as strong as in person. Just because, like, you know, you're looking at a screen, you're not interacting face to face, and you can't pick up on a lot of like nonverbal, as well as just like, you know, like really getting to know somebody. So I do think that we can still have relationships online. That is becoming more and more apparent as we become more digital. You just need to take the time to address each student individually by chatting to them and just getting to know them, saying their name. It's easier to remember people's names unless they have a different name when they're signed in. But the check-ins are always like really good. So it's like you want to, especially with art, you want to check in and see how their progress is going. So that's one thing you're missing, is that you don't get to walk around and see what they're drawing or what they're making. Another negative that I found is that we're sitting all day. We're physical atrophy is real danger when you're in front of the screen. So like especially in like the summer camp, I learned this. There was always like I needed to take a break in between and then like stretch, and I forget to do that myself while I'm teaching. Actually, I've been teaching all day, so I haven't stretched, so I need to. One way to get everybody like up and about is playing like Simon Says, like a fun game that gets everybody. You get everybody on camera so you can see them, and it gets everybody up. That's another thing with the not getting the relationship is that a lot of kids, a lot of students want to turn off their cameras. They don't want to show their faces, and at Cincinnati Public School, they don't force the students to turn on their cameras. So when I was doing high school, I honestly didn't know what a lot of these students looked like. But with the younger students, now that they're in person, they have to turn their cameras on so that we see that they're logged in. Let's see. The other negative I would say is access to materials is so important. So you need to make sure that they get that access. I haven't really had to deal with this issue so much. I haven't had to like physically take materials to students or prepare art kits, mainly because my high school experience was digital anyway. We were doing a lot of Photoshop and InDesign and photo editor or video editor. And then my video game class was all online too. It's all using software. Even the Who's an American Today, it's just like they don't have any materials. They just use their phones to make videos or their computer cameras to make the videos, and then they use a video editor. So I haven't really dealt with the materials, which brings me to a positive. Digital media lessons are great for online learning. So I had a really great success with Who is an American Today, which I feel like I'm talking too much, so I will save that for a little bit later and give the floor over to Chris to talk a little bit.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I agree with a lot of those things. I think for me, the biggest con is just it seems that the inequalities are widening for those students that already may have been struggling as they move throughout the public school system. As Ryan mentioned, access to materials is a challenge. It's hard to know students' needs when they're online, and it's hard to build those relationships. And I think that as a result, it's easier for certain students to fall through the gaps. And I know that at my school, at the end of our first quarter, we're now seeing our administration really start to focus on what can we do to help those students that have kind of fallen through the gaps and that have maybe not participated or not completed the assignments that most of their peers have. Kind of related to that, sometimes with online education, you all may have noticed it's easier for the students just to strive for mere completion as opposed to actual quality of engagement. I think that can sometimes pop up in our students' effort and participation. And this quarter I've really tried to just emphasize that if I'm giving an in-person student 5 class periods to work on an art project, 5 hours or so, that's the kind of time and dedication that I'm hoping an online student will give as well. And just kind of breaking that down, I hate to kind of quantify it by time spent on a project, but sometimes students need to hear that, like, look, you have this time. I'm hoping that they're using it productively and creatively. And just kind of related to all that as well as just student engagement. As Ryan said, it's sometimes harder to engage with students digitally than it is in person. Some pros, I think that technology and accessibility are becoming more and more widespread as we shift to cloud-based technologies, especially with software like Adobe Creative Cloud. Students no longer necessarily need to come into the classroom to access Adobe Photoshop. In my class, we use Adobe Illustrator, Adobe InDesign a lot. Nowadays, they have access to all those software programs at home, as long as they have a computer that can handle that type software. And kind of related to that, they also have access to their files or their projects at home. So I've noticed a big shift in students just over the past year or two using those cloud-based storage devices and those cloud-based softwares, which is really nice because they can really access their projects and their artwork anywhere, anytime they want, if they have the technology to do so. Some other pros, I think that, as we shift to kind of think about the digital futures in creative education, modifications and adaptability is going to be big. Just to give you guys some examples, in my photography class, it used to be that students would go out with a DSLR, take the pictures, and then they would edit the pictures in Photoshop, print them off, turn them in. Well, some students still do that. Now I kind of give students the option to choose what's the best fit for them. So they can still take pictures with the digital camera and edit them in Adobe Photoshop, or they can take pictures with their cell phone and edit them on some kind of free software program like Pixlr.com. Or if they're not feeling those options, they can even take pictures with their cell phone and just edit them right there on their phone using an app or something like that. So just that ability to choose, I think, is a big pro of online education. And kind of another example of that is in my graphic design class, it used to be that students would just use Adobe Illustrator for their design projects, but now they can use a variety of online resources to complete their projects, or even just draw things by hand. And then share it with me that way by taking a picture of it or scanning it in. So, I didn't think that this shift to online education would bring back making graphic design by hand, but in some ways it has. And then finally, one last pro is that in some ways communication is actually better than ever between parents and students and teachers. Students have a wide variety of ways to communicate with their teachers nowadays, including chatting via video conferencing. If they don't want to turn on their mics or their cameras, they can type it in the chat. I've noticed that students are a lot more engaged via email, and so are parents. So I think that this shift to online has helped with communication in some ways. And so that's something that is positive to see. Those are just a few of the pros and cons that come up. I think we're still kind of learning about how all of this is going to affect current and future education, but those are just a few things that I thought of. So thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Chris. That actually leads to my last question before I turn it over to everyone. So when we return to face-to-face, what is our new digital future for art education? Like, what things are we going to take from this experience and keep? And what things are we going to address? Like you mentioned, equity. Yeah, so any theories on that? Like when we come back or when we go back, which we hopefully will soon, sooner than later. Yeah, what things in our digital future do you see that have developed from this experience that we will keep with us? So maybe Ryan, you could go first since Chris just finished.
So for one thing that I know is that remote teaching will not go away. It will definitely stay. I mean, we had remote teaching before the quarantine. So I definitely see a lot more integration into the online, into the physical classroom. Like Chris was saying, there's all kinds of like online like lesson plans and websites like Schoology to where the teacher can put up their material as well as share their lessons in the grades and the rubrics, and then students can also turn in their work online, which is all right. We were already doing with Canvas. So I have heard the dread that snow days will no longer be a thing. Political standings aside, I mean, I think climate change is already taking care of that. So that's my risky statement there. But yeah, you can maybe now teach remotely, even if you're sick. You can have theoretically students that are not from the country, like they could be out of the country. And so it's like you can actually have a more wider range and maybe reach more students this way. So maybe some other future ways is just I think that a lot of people are learning like digital technologies, which I think is very important, especially like dealing with the like social media, like what would you call these video conferences? So everybody's learning how to do all these different video conferences. They're learning how to use OneDrive and upload stuff, so students won't have any more excuses for not turning in homework, except for that, oh, the file didn't upload, it was corrupt. I'm hoping that this can maybe light a fire under some people and getting internet access to everybody, and getting computers to everybody. Like maybe, you know, everybody should be given a computer from the government. I mean, why not? I'd rather spend it on education than military, my opinion. But yeah, so as far as the future goes, I think that we're just gonna have the online be more adapted to the in classroom. Like technology is going to, I think, grow, and this media will grow.
Yeah, I certainly agree with all that. And, you know, I kind of was doing a little brainstorming, trying to think about what the future is going to look like. And I don't have anything groundbreaking, but just things that I think that are going to be important to consider. Just number one, be flexible when students come back. I think it's going to be really important to just kind of engage with the student, be aware of technological capabilities. Not everybody is coming to the classroom with the same set of skills and with the same types of computers and the same access to technology. And I think related to that, just accommodating different learning styles. Anytime we can give students a choice, I think that that gives them an equal chance for success. And kind of related to that as well, just treating students differently depending on their needs. I mean, these are all things that I think we all think about, but have been kind of made very relevant to what's going on in the classroom today with our online education. You know, asking students what they need. And most importantly, I think one of the big things that I learned my first few years of teaching is just to celebrate the success, focus on the positive, and try not to get too bogged down with things that aren't going well, because there's always going to be something that's causing you stress or causing you worry. When I started this school year, I saw something online that I really liked, so I printed it off and I hung it next to my desk, and I just kind of look at it every day. And it's a checklist for class this year, and there's 5 things, and it says in order. Number 1 is to teach. Keep them safe, number 1. Number 2, lower their anxiety about the current situation. Number 3, make them laugh. Number 4, make them feel love. And number 5, teach them something. And I think that those are good things to try to strive for, not just this year, but in every year as a teacher. So hopefully we can all do that. Looking forward.
Thanks, Chris. I think now we can open it up to questions from everybody else. So I think if you have one, just go ahead and, like Flavia said, identify yourself, maybe introduce yourself to everybody else and ask your question.
Hi, I have a question if that's if it's my turn. I'm Taylor. I graduated with my master's in art education this past spring. I am currently working in the adult education department down at the public library, and I'm about to teach my first Zoom class next week, which is about mending your clothing. And I've been really concerned about, like, because normally when I've taught people how to do things like that before, I am very hands-on with them, and I'm really not sure how, like, obviously I'm going to be doing it through video, but I've just been really concerned about how that's going to translate to a Zoom class. And so I wonder, I know both of you are more focused on digital forms of art, but I wondered if either of you had done anything more hands-on with the online format, and how that went for you, and how you sort of troubleshot that.
Well, I have some suggestions for you. So I know that you have a more physical thing and I do a more digital thing, but I still had a lot of issues when teaching something. So a couple of things that I did when I did the digital, I think maybe you should consider making a video to go along with your lecture. That way, because when somebody's doing something online and they're learning, if they have a video that they can pause and rewind, so they'll listen to like your step one, they'll pause it, do that step one, and then they can unpause it. Because one thing when I was teaching the video game design is I went a little too fast. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this. And some of the students still were working with that first thing. So I had to repeat myself. So you might have to do a lot of repeating, a lot of slow, like go very slowly. And then one thing that was really, I think, great for students is when they had an issue, having them turn on their camera and showing you the issue so you can troubleshoot it for them.
Hi, Taylor. Thanks for the question. My response is pretty similar to Ryan's. I was also going to suggest having some kind of video, whether that's something that you create or something that you share a link to for some kind of tutorial on YouTube. I think that would be great, whether you want them to follow along with that video as you're speaking or giving your demo, or whether that's just something that they can access after the demo. I think that having a video is great in case they need to go back, like Ryan was saying, and rewatch a certain step. Kind of related to that, you might also be able to find some resource online that offers them step-by-step resources. I know that a lot of digital art techniques have that type of thing available where you can kind of see, here's step one, step two, step three. That might be good. I think you said they were going to be mending clothing. And I think most importantly, just be available for questions. So that's where that kind of communication and that kind of back and forth might enter. Some people might feel more comfortable typing questions in the chat. Other people might be more comfortable turning their audio or their video on. But after you're done with the demo, just kind of giving them time to work and some time for you to hang out can hopefully help them answer questions. And like Ryan was saying, if somebody has an issue, hopefully they can turn their video on and kind of show you what's going on. And then from there, you can help them troubleshoot any problems that might pop up.
I like what Chris said about watching the chat. That's such a big, because when you're presenting, your whole screen's covered. So you got to like flip out to be like, oh, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, yeah.
So watch the chat.
And one thing I learned real quick is how different video conferencing web services offer chat. So for example, if you are using Zoom, which I think you said you were, you can either chat privately with individual people, or you can chat to everybody. So that's really helpful. I'm not sure if you can do that in other platforms. Like in Google Meet, I learned very quickly that there's no way that you can really monitor or edit the chat. And so it's kind of like the Wild West for your participants. You can't turn it off. So kind of related to that, you may do a quick run through with a friend or two before you do the actual event, and that can help you see what kind of problems might arise during the actual.
Oh my God, Chris, you definitely hit the nail on the head. One of the biggest issues with online stuff is tech issues. You'll run into stuff that you weren't even prepared for. My first day with the elementary school students, I couldn't see them. The camera wasn't working. Then they couldn't hear me in the next class. And then the teacher had the camera up, so I was looking at the ceiling, and I was just like, "Oh, cool! Look what you guys are doing!" And it's just, and then like, yeah, internet connections, videos not working, videos with no sound. You'll run into everything. So prepare for tech issues.
I have a question, but I also have a thing for Taylor. And I'm Maddie. I guess I'm technically, I have my MFA from UC, but I'm also there art education, but taking a break to actually teach in Kentucky. But for another thing you can do, Taylor, is you can use a old phone as a document camera for to hook it up to Zoom. I can send you a video. I got that from my school. It's actually kind of useful if it works. And then I have a question related to, because Chris brought up using, you all talked about Adobe a lot, and I would like to use digital technology and teach digital technology to my middle schoolers, especially because they're very interested in it, but we don't have the funds for Adobe or computers that will run it. So I'm curious about alternatives, because the phones are great for photography, and I've already had meetings with the superintendent about them using their phones. But as far as technology for editing photos, video, anything like that, would love to hear suggestions.
And thanks for the question, Maddie. You know, during the first week or even before, we realized that not everybody was going to be able to use Adobe Creative Cloud. Most of our students work with Chromebooks, and I don't think Chromebook is compatible, or at least most Chromebooks are not compatible with Adobe Creative Cloud. So we had to real quickly kind of find some alternatives, and there are some out there. I mean, Pixlr, Pixlr.com is a surprisingly handy free version of Photoshop. You can use Pixlr very similar to the way you use Photoshop. You can open images, edit them. There's a lot of different tools and adjustment layers you can use, and you can save them. So that's a resource that a lot of my students have been using, and you can really use it from any computer. And there are also just a ton of different digital illustration softwares out there. One that I use is called Vector, VECTR, kind of like Pixlr. It's a free online digital imaging software you can use. But other examples that are a little bit easier, like Canva is a big one for laying out posters, resumes, creating simple designs like that. And yeah, it sounds like some other people have used that one. But you know, there are a bunch, and I know that I've asked my students, what do you guys use? And that can often be a great way to go, is just maybe ask some artistic middle school students that might already be doing stuff like this, see what they use and see if you can kind of tap into that. But yeah, I'd recommend Pixlr for photography and Vector, VECTR.com for digital illustration. Those are both free websites, but I'm sure that there's more. I knew Google has some, and I'm sure there's more out there. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And actually, I wrote down the ones that Christopher just listed, because I would love to learn some of those as well. Because when I was doing the teaching in the high school, I was really excited to learn Adobe products just with the kids. But since we were online, not everybody had the Adobe products. So we had to figure it out. And Christopher really did hit the nail on the head of like letting students kind of use what they know, which is great for digital media, because maybe some students know stuff that you don't. For example, when we did the Who is an American Today in Miss Sillis's class, I had to teach them a very basic video editor, which is literally just video editor on Windows. It comes with Windows 10, and it's the most basic editor I've ever seen. You can't really do much with it, but they actually had some pretty good success in making their videos, because we had them do photo slides, but you could also import videos into it, taken with the phone. I do know that some students used other programs, such as iMovie, which was free on Apple products. Windows Movie Maker is also free on Windows products. I don't know if Google Chromebook has a video editor, but I'm sure it does. Seems like Google's got it all, and it's all free. But yeah, so I do suggest that when teaching a new digital media, Miss Sillis in my class brought up a really good idea. Well, she was just like, this is necessary, but we had to do a test run before I jumped straight into the Who's an American Today project, because that's, it's complicated. It's a big question that we really wanted them to think and produce good videos. So we had them do something simple like, what is your favorite cartoon character? You got to use 5 images and then do a voiceover recording. And yeah, it was very successful. And it got them used to the editor, and we troubleshooted any issues that we had. So run some test runs and then go for the full editor. But yeah, there's a lot of free stuff out there.
I had a question comment. I don't know. Is it still time for taking those? Because I think in this time where we are right now, there is this ongoing discussion of like when we return to classrooms or going back and blah, blah, blah. And I'm running against this current of what if that's not desired? Like, what if that isn't an option? So there could be this change, maybe let's just say paradigm shift, if you will, that what if it becomes both as a standard? And what I'm hoping to see is that everything that both Ryan and Christopher are bringing to this, and everyone else who's out there doing this in the field, is that this doesn't end up being just a blip. Because I think we're missing an opportunity. One, I think this needs to be documented and recorded, because I think it's going to change teacher education. So think about your peers, think about, what's happening now, where there are students going through getting their practicum experience online, not getting practicum experience necessarily in the classroom. And it's not happening at every school, but it happens at some schools. So it's worth thinking about, how do we keep this? Keep this mindset, keep this as an idea for education moving forward. So I know this is being recorded, so you guys will have to, of course, the pressure's on Christopher and Ryan, of course, to make this happen. But I think it is going to change teacher ed. I don't think we can't not teach for this anymore. So I don't know if there's a question in there, but I'm just wondering about feedback from everyone else sitting here. I think it's something we have to reckon with. That idea of returning to face might not be desired, and it might not work. So I'll mute.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for that question and comment. I agree. I think that there are a lot of positives that we can pull out of this that will hopefully shape what the future of education looks like. One of the things that first came up is just class sizes. It's been kind of nice that 20% of our students have shifted online. And so now class sizes have gone from 25, 30 people to, in some cases, 20 or so. So in addition to that, it's just nice to give students and families a choice for what makes sense for them. Some students might be working, some students might need to stay at home. I think that it makes sense to kind of tailor the educational experience for each student based on their needs and wants for what they're hoping to get out of education. And I think that's just a better fit for some students. Some students like um, to be more digitally connected than others. And at the very least, I think that this time and this new shift has made a lot of teachers, myself included, kind of rethink the lessons that they're giving their students, and also the way in which they're teaching. And hopefully in that rethinking, we are coming out as more engaging and just better educators because of it. So I'm not sure what the future holds, but I appreciate your comment there, Karen. I think that's good to think about.
Yeah, like I said before too, is just like, this isn't going to go away. If anything, I think it's going to make online classes better, because honestly, I hated online classes, but I do think they're being run more constructively. I took a online class that I just hated. I hate the discussion board, where it's just like, you have to write your response, and then you have to respond to 3 other people. Then you have to reply to the people who responded to you, and then there's a lot of writing. But in one of my online classes now, we have like breakout meets where we just have discussions online, where we can actually talk instead of having to write and cite and do a lot of grunt work, So yeah, I don't think it's going to go away. And I honestly like the improvement of online classes.
Tanya has her hand up. Tanya, if you want to jump in.
Thank you. I come to this group through a colleague of mine, Samantha Cherrick. So she invited me to participate in this, and I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to do this. I have a question about expectations. So what are some of the expectations that any of you have with participation and student accountability? How do you measure it? Because we struggled with it in the spring, and we are completely in person right now with the threat of going online. So my fear is that I'm going to lose like 55% of my kids. How did you combat some of those issues?
Hi, Tanya. Thanks for the question. That's a tough one. And I know that kind of starting from the top, back in the spring, it was not possible for our students to fail a digital or online class. And so that really lowered the expectations for everybody. If you can't fail a class, then why would you want to put forth much effort? So kind of at the start of this year, our administrative team made sure that they were very clear to all the students and the parents that you can fail, you can be marked truant, and things like that, just to kind of heighten the expectations. But I will say that it is a struggle to keep students engaged digitally. So I haven't come up with the perfect solution for that yet, other than continuing to communicate, continuing to be flexible, and continue to reach out to those students that you're not hearing from. Do you mind if I ask you a follow-up question? Do you know if the last time you went online, were they able to fail, and or are they able to fail this year?
Oh, great question. We were not able to fail them if they weren't already failing.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And right now, as of today, there is no plan in place as far as what are we doing if we go offline
Right.
again. So we have on Friday, we have a in-service. So I think that we'll have opportunities to talk about and ask those types of questions or devise a plan. So this is kind of coming at a really great time for me,
Yeah.
just to kind of bounce off of other teachers outside of our own district.
I don't know, Ryan, do you have any thoughts on that? How to keep students engaged and hold them accountable and stuff?
You just you gotta call them out, I think is when is the biggest issue. So my real only experience with this is from my time with Ms. Sillis, because they were still held accountable. Like they still had, so I was teaching at SCPA, and that is a career tech school, and it's very hard to get into. So they had to keep their kind of rigid boards. So they do work really hard to try to keep the students in, but if you fail the boards once, and then if you fail at you get put on like a hey, we're gonna try to get you to pass. But if you fail it again, you might get kicked out of the school. So it's very important that the students still get their work in. And what we had to do is we just had to really get on them. It's like, hey, you're missing this. Like, hey, look at your grade, it's an F because you're missing stuff. And they're like, wait, what? I turned that in. And you're like, well, I didn't get it. So, but the thing too is Miss Sillis was still very flexible. She had what she called what does she call it? A fluid due date. So there was a due date, and then like she can change it. And she had that since, teaching in person. It's the whole, but even more with online, it was more fluid than that. Though she did say in the spring, they were a lot less strict about it, and they had to tighten that back up to make sure that students were still engaged. But yeah, you have to call them out, and not call them out like in front of everybody, but ask them to stay after and be like, hey, you're missing stuff, and I want you to get this in because I want you to pass. So yeah, I say get their cameras on too. As even if the school says they don't need to, I say make it a requirement.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
All right. Well, we are at 6 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Let me do some unpinning here. Flavia, do you want to jump in quick? And then if there are still questions, I'm sure our panelists would be happy to connect with you maybe after, not saying stay on now, but can share contact and everyone can be in touch. So Flavia, if you want to jump in.
Sure. So it was lovely to listen to the conversation. And I think the underlying issue here is how do you stay engaged in your own professional development? And to that end, I want to share with you some of the new developments in the master program in art education, because we've been thinking very long and hard about sort of the elitist traditions of art school, and which end up sort of reflected in the way art teachers are trained and art educators are trained. So for a long time, we've been thinking about how would we make our master's program more accessible, more inclusive, and more relevant. And our response to that, and I think COVID perhaps was the kick in the pants to get it done, was to create a summer intensive master's program. So I'm happy to report, and I'm asking you to help me spread the word, that our master's has moved from a traditional academic schedule to an 8-week summer intensive. And it can be completed during 2 summers and 2 other courses that can be taken online during the fall and spring semester. There are lots of attractive features to this master's program. One, that we are going to be living in a brand new DAP Annex building, which is a making and talking and researching space that will be almost exclusive to our use in the summer. And some of the tenets of this master's really focus on the idea of making and all the broad connotations of making, from making art to making relationships to making curriculum, the idea of connecting and how do we connect with each other, and how we connect different topics, and how we connect new ideas, and how that's essential to continue to grow and to feel supported. And ultimately, the idea of leading, that art educators have the potential to be great educational leaders, because as creatives, we are really well positioned to envision new solutions to today's educational problems and to seize the opportunities. And I think all of those characteristics were sort of highlighted in the talk today. So when you get a link to the recording of our conversation, and when you get a link to the contact information for Ryan and Chris, you also get a document created in Canva that has the highlights of the program. And on November 5th, so next Thursday, not this Thursday, the following one, at 5:30, there is a virtual graduate open house at the college for anybody who is interested in graduate programs in the college, and art education new program will be featured there as well. So I am really happy to tell you about this development that was in the books, but not in reality, but it will be in reality summer 21. And I would love if you could help me spread the word.
I'm still unmuted.
Perfect
Awesome.
timing.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Flavia. Yeah, keep an eye out for a note from me. This was recorded too, so if you have colleagues that you think should hear it, you'll definitely be able to share it that way. And we hope to be in touch with you again soon. Thank you to our panelists, and thanks for being here. Jazz hands.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you. It was good to see everyone.
Oh, yeah. I think it's only us. So thank you, guys.
Yay.
That was awesome. I appreciate everybody's ideas, and I thought the conversation was quite exhilarating, actually. So thank you.
I think so too.
Yay.
I think it was
This-
wonderful.
It was great to be a part of.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I'll be in touch soon.
All
Great.
right.
All
Thank
right.
you, Jamie. You did a
Bye.
superb job, and you are a
Bye.
great moderator, Chris.
Oh, thanks.
You
Yeah,
may have a
that's great.
career there.
Glasses.
Talk show host.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.